Hi everybody, it's Jane Green from PDTraining. How are you all today? So today we're going to talk about domestic violence in the hope that you will recognise the characteristics of domestic violence and what it looks like and where to get some help. So let's start by talking about domestic violence, which is sometimes called intimate partner violence. Also, don't forget to subscribe. The little button's just down there in the corner. All you have to do is click on it, and a like would really be appreciated. And if you would like to leave a comment on what sort of advice could you offer anyone who's suffering from a domestic violent relationship, whether it be physical or emotional or sexual abuse. Now, this is called intimate partner violence because it occurs between people in an intimate relationship. Domestic violence can actually take on many forms, including emotional, sexual, and physical abuse, and threats of abuse. And it can happen in heterosexual or same-sex relationships, heterosexual or gay, lesbian relationships. And it always involves an imbalance of power and control. What an abuser does is they use intimidating, hurtful words and behaviours to control their partner. Now, it might not be easy to identify domestic violence at first. While some relationships are clearly abusive from the outset, abuse often starts subtly and it gets worse over time. And you might be experiencing domestic violence if you're in a relationship with someone who, for example, calls you names and puts you down and insults you all the time. Now, look, I'll give you an example. What would you know? In front of a group of people, when you have an opinion, for example, or something like, yeah, that's right, never wanting sex, yeah, I know, I hardly ever get any. In a continual manner, this becomes a way of putting you down, referring to your sexual activity, that you perhaps don't want to have sex that often, and in some way inferring that you are not a very sexual or sensuous person. So these are just some examples. Now, also, domestic violence could look like preventing you, for example, from going to work or school, or seeing family members or friends when you want to. So this is an amount of control that starts to build around you. Another way is trying to control how you spend money, for example, where you go, what medicines you take, or what you wear. So you need to be aware of these signs if that sort of thing is happening around you, because domestic violence and abuse is not always the physical only. In fact, sometimes it hasn't got the physical at all, and it's just got the total control over you and everything that you want to do or who you want to see. Another sign is, acting jealous always and thinking that you're being unfaithful, never actually trusting you and accusing you of being unfaithful with no apparent reason. The other sign is that they get angry when they're drinking or taking drugs. So their behaviour changes basically while under the influence. They may control and not want you to go and see a healthcare provider, especially if this is all going on, and it could be a psychologist or a counsellor that you want to see. There's fear that you may disclose some of the things that are happening within the relationship. They may threaten you with violence or a weapon, picking up a knife and threatening you with it, or grabbing a gun and saying, if you do that again, you'll be sorry. Hits, kicks, shoves, slaps, chokes, or otherwise hurts you. Your children or your pets, for example, also, a shove to the kids, whacking the kids, etc. Forces you to have sex or to engage in sexual acts against your will. So things that perhaps you don't really want to do sexually, you will be still forced to do. And often they blame you for their violent behaviour and kind of tell you that you deserve it. Remember that not all of these apply, only some of these might apply to you. However, these are signs that you are in an abusive, intimate relationship Another sign is they might threaten to tell your friends, family, colleagues, or community members about your sexual orientation or gender identity, especially if you're keeping that a secret, so that becomes a weapon against you. For example, if you're a lesbian, bisexual, or transgender person, you might also be experiencing domestic violence if you're in a relationship with someone who tells you that authorities won't help a lesbian, bisexual, or transgender person. They might say, oh, they won't help you, you're just a lesbian, bisexual, or transgender. They don't help those kind of people. If it's a woman doing it to a male, often they'll say, oh, women can't be violent. And this is something that perhaps will stop a male from going and seeking help who's in a highly abusive relationship. And look, if you don't think this happens to men, trust me, it happens to men, okay? And it can be as violent as holding a knife. I remember seeing a documentary where basically she burnt him, she scalded him, she burnt him with cigarettes, she threw hot water at him, she threatened him with knives, she cut him. I mean, this went on for years, and being a man, he wasn't able to feel that he could get some help, that no one would believe that a woman is actually doing these sort of things to him. As I found out, women can also be sexual abusers of children. You know, there are couples who abuse children. So we need to understand that, yes, okay, most domestic violence unfortunately does happen to women from a male, but there is also a lot of domestic violence that happens to men who never speak about it. They speak about it to me. You may be not ready to seek help, and this is because of the following reasons. Your partner blames you for the violence in your relationship. You know, they say, oh, well, no one's going to believe you because you're always like this or you're like that, and nobody likes you and everyone can see what you're really like. And basically, they rarely take responsibility for their own actions. Often, the abuser can be very charming to the outside world, and nobody actually would ever imagine that they are actually violating you in this way. The abusers often do this because they're very concerned with outward appearances, and so they put on that extra charm. They look stable to those outside of your relationship, and this may cause you to believe that his or her actions can only be explained by something you've done. It's all your fault. Now, the other thing is, if you haven't told a doctor or a healthcare provider about the abuse, they may only take note of some unhealthy patterns in your thinking or behaviour, and this can lead to a misdiagnosis. So, survivors of intimate partner violence may develop symptoms that resemble personality disorders. Exposure to intimate partner violence also increases the risk of mental health conditions, as you well know, such as depression, anxiety, or PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. So if healthcare providers focus on your symptoms, that might worsen your fear that you are responsible for the abuse in your relationship. Often when we're being abused, we may also react to that abuse by verbally or physically yelling, pushing or hitting him or her during conflicts. And you know, this makes the person who's being abused often think that it must be their fault because, you know, they've also been violent or abusive verbally. And so they start to worry that actually it's, you know, they are abusive. And it's more likely really that you acted in self-defense or out of emotional distress from the abuse. Your abuser may use incidents to manipulate you. For example, describing them as proof that you are an abusive partner. If you're having trouble identifying what's happening, take a step back and look at larger patterns in your relationship. Then what you need to do is review the signs of domestic violence. In an abusive relationship, the person who routinely uses these behaviours is the abuser. The person on the receiving end is being abused. Sometimes if you're pregnant, this can actually hurt your baby, hurt the fetus, as the violence can often start to become more so. Perhaps because at that time, you are feeling that you need more support, etc. And so you might ask for that, or you might be feeling stressed out, and that can elevate the amount of abuse towards you. And look, children who witness domestic violence, even if it's not against them, suffer immensely. They grow up with social problems, education problems, and often will develop into children who won't forgive you later on in life for staying. So we need to also really see the impact of domestic violence on our children. And also what happens with children, they're more likely to think that abuse is normal, okay? And keep the cycle going by getting involved with another person who is an abuser. In order to break the cycle, the best thing you can do is remove your children from domestic violent relationships, such as the ones I'm talking about. And also often, you might worry that telling the truth will further endanger you, your child or other family members, and that it might break up your family. But seeking help is the best way to protect your children and yourself. So look, if you're in an abusive situation, you might recognise this pattern. Your abuser threatens violence. Your abuser strikes. Your abuser apologises, promises to change, and offers gifts. The cycle repeats itself. Typically, the violence becomes more frequent and severe over time. The longer you stay in an abusive relationship, the greater the physical and emotional toll. You might become depressed, anxious, and begin to doubt your ability to even take care of yourself. You might feel helpless and paralysed. Now, if you are an older woman, you might face challenges related to your age and the length of your relationship. You may have grown up when domestic violence was simply not discussed. You or your partner may have health problems that increase your dependency or sense of responsibility. If you're in the same-sex relationship, you might be less likely to seek help after an assault. If you don't want to disclose your sexual orientation, some people don't want their families to know that they're gay or they're lesbian or they're transgender. If you've been sexually assaulted, for example, by another woman, you might also fear that you won't be believed. The only way to break the cycle of domestic violence is to take action. Start by telling someone about what is happening, about the abuse, whether it's a friend, a loved one, or a healthcare provider, or other close contact. You can also call a national domestic violence hotline for help. At first, you might find it really hard to talk about the abuse, but understand that you are not alone and there are people who can help you. You're also likely to feel relief and receive much needed support. Create a safety plan. Leaving an abuser can be dangerous, as people who are in those abusive relationships will clearly understand. Consider taking these precautions. Call a women's shelter or domestic violence hotline for advice. Make a call at the safe time when the abuser isn't around, or from a friend's house or other safe location. So call a women's shelter or, a domestic hotline, violence hotline for advice. Make a call at the safe time when the abuser isn't around, or from a friend's house from a safe location. Pack an emergency bag, have it ready, that includes items you'll need should you suddenly have to leave, such as exit clothes and keys to the house. Leave the bag in a safe place where it can't be found, and keep important personal papers, money and prescription medications on hand so that you can take them with you on short notice, and know exactly where you'll go and how you will get there. Now remember, protect your communication and location. An abuser can use technology to monitor your telephone and online communication and to track your location. If you're concerned for your safety, seek help. To maintain your privacy, use phones cautiously. Your abuser might intercept your calls and listen to your conversations. He or she might use caller ID. And check your cell phone or search your phone billing records and conversations to see your call and your texting history. That's how they find you. Use your home computer really cautiously. Your abuser might use spyware to monitor your emails and your websites that you visit. Consider using a computer at your friend's house or a library or somewhere else like work. Remove GPS devices from your vehicle so you cannot be tracked. Frequently change your email passwords, your Facebook passwords, and any other password to your phone. Choose passwords that would be impossible for your abuser to guess. Make sure you clear your viewing history from the computer you're using. Very easy to do. If you don't know how to do it, ask someone to help you. Where to seek help? In your own city, first of all, you can call someone you trust, for example, a friend, a loved one, a neighbour who you've made arrangements with, a co-worker, or a religious or spiritual advisor for support. You can also call your national domestic hotline, your healthcare provider you can call, or a local women's shelter or crisis centre. You can call a counselling or mental health centre, or you can call a local court. It can be hard to recognise it or admit that you're in an abusive relationship, but help is available. Remember, no one deserves to be abused. And also remember that this is what abusers do. I am sorry, it will never happen again. I love you so much. You're the only person that believes in me. My last partner left me. But you understand me, I love you. What will I ever do without you? I can't live without you. You're my world. Then they'll start bringing gifts, maybe sending flowers, buying you chocolates, etc. And this is all manipulation for you to stay. So my message out there to all of you who is in a domestic violent relationship, you need to get help and you need to leave. Do not put up with domestic violence and emotional and sexual violence. Not only will it impact totally on your life, kill your self-esteem and make you feel so worthless and trapped, but it will also impact on your children for the rest of their life. And often it impacts on your children so much that you will end up having a dysfunctional relationship with your children even when they're adults. Not to mention, if you stay, your children will think this is normal behaviour depending on their age and can end up themselves in violent, dysfunctional and emotionally abusive relationships. I hope this has helped you. Take care everyone. Bye for now.